Okay, so picture this. You're in a courtroom, the air is thick, right? Everyone's looking at the accused. Standard stuff.
Uh-huh. Usual focus.
But then things get weird. The spotlight, it starts moving away from the accused and, well, onto the person who was harmed.
That's a really unsettling image. It feels fundamentally wrong.
Exactly. And believe it or not, that kind of scenario has been playing out recently, so much so that India's highest court actually had to step in.
Right. This really came to a head on Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. That's when the Supreme Court directly took issue with some, frankly, quite troubling remarks coming out of the Allahabad High Court.
Yeah, it wasn't just a side comment. They were responding to specific instances where it seemed like the courts were, well, blaming the victims. And that's really what we want to dig into today. What are the implications when victim blaming creeps into the judicial system? And, how does that affect society? We've been looking at the reports from these court proceedings pretty closely.
To really get it, we probably need to look at the two specific Allahabad High Court cases that basically triggered this whole thing.
Definitely. So the first one. This surfaced around April 11th, 2025. It was a bail hearing in a rape case. The accused, he'd been arrested back in December 2024, I think.
That sounds right. And the allegation involved a postgraduate student at Amity University's Noida campus. Pretty serious allegations.
Very. But the real firestorm wasn't just about the bail decision itself. It was about what the High Court judge reportedly said during that hearing.
Ah, yes. The comment that the complainant, the woman who reported the rape, had, quote, herself invited trouble.
Right. Invited trouble by going to the accused's house after she'd apparently been drinking. That was mentioned. I mean, just pause on that for a second.
Because it's staggering, isn't it, the implication there?
A judge suggesting the victim is somehow responsible for being assaulted because of where she was or what she did beforehand.
It really makes you question the whole framework. Like, does being in a certain place or having had a drink suddenly negate your right to safety? It's a dangerous line of thought, especially from the bench.
Absolutely. And the worrying part is it wasn't just a one-off comment. There was another case just a few weeks before March 17th, 2025. Also the Allahabad High Court.
Ah, the one involving the child? That was deeply disturbing. The 11-year-old girl.
Yes. And the accused individuals faced allegations of grabbing her breasts, breaking her pajama string, trying to drag her under a culvert.
Yeah.
Just horrific actions.
Horrific. But the controversy there, as I recall, was about how the charges were handled.
Exactly. Despite these terrible details, the charges were apparently reduced, downgraded. They weren't facing rape or attempted rape anymore.
Instead, it was assault with intent to disrobe, Section 354 and B of the IPC, and some lesser provisions under the POCSO Act.
Which is the act meant to protect children. It just seems baffling.
It sends a terrible message, doesn't it? Like, the intent wasn't as serious because the final, most extreme act, perhaps, wasn't completed or proven in a certain way.
Which is precisely where the Supreme Court came in, and they came in strong.
Yeah, their reaction on that Tuesday, April 15th, it was pretty forceful. The reports called it a verbal sledgehammer, didn't they? Aimed right at these unwarranted observations.
They did not hold back. I remember reading their direct question about the bail hearing comment. Bail can be granted, but why make such comments? What is this discussion that she herself invited trouble? Judges should be more careful when saying such things.
Oof, that's direct. A very clear caution.
And crucially, they didn't wait for someone to appeal. They initiated a suo motu case.
Meaning they took it upon themselves.
Right.
Which really highlights how seriously they viewed these incidents. It wasn't just procedural, it was about the fundamental principles of justice.
Right. So, okay, why does this matter to everyone listening? It's easy to see this as just, legal jargon and court stuff.
But it's so much more than that. This touches on everyone's safety, really. It shapes how we, as a society, understand consent, accountability, who's responsible when harm occurs.
It affects whether survivors feel they can come forward, whether they trust the system to treat them fairly, not blame them.
Think about it like this, in a really simple way. Someone bumps you at a party, spills your drink everywhere, and then they turn around and say, well, what were you doing standing there?
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, right?
Totally ridiculous. But apply that same faulty logic to something as serious as assault and have it come from a judge. The damage is immense. It erodes trust, it silences victims.
And it potentially lets perpetrators off the hook, or at least lessens their accountability. It fosters a culture where blame is easily shifted.
Which is why the Supreme Court's intervention feels so significant. They drew a line.
Okay, so let's maybe circle back to some of the specifics and then think about the wider picture.
Sure. So we mentioned the legal sections involved Section 376 for rape, Section 18 of POCSO for attempts against children, Section 354BB for assault with intent to disrobe.
And the definitions under Section 375 for rape, 511 for attempt, the issue in that second case, the downgrading, it hinged on this idea that because the alleged rape wasn't completed, maybe due to interruption, the charge should be lesser.
Which is problematic logic. Think about it. If someone tries to rob a bank but gets caught halfway through, do we say, oh, well, no harm done, just attempted mischief?
No, of course not. The intent was clear, the actions were taken, the crime was attempted burglary or whatever the specific charges. The interruption doesn't negate the criminal intent or the act itself.
Exactly. The trauma and violation in the child's case weren't erased just because the final act might have been thwarted. Applying that logic seems to miss the point entirely.
And this all connects back to that larger societal issue of victim blaming. It's not just in courtrooms, we see it reflected in statistics too.
Right, the NCRB data. I think for 2023 it showed over 30,000 reported rape cases in India.
30,000 reported. And we all know the actual number is likely much, much higher because of underreporting.
And fear of being blamed or not believed is a huge factor in that underreporting. These kinds of judicial comments, they sadly reinforce that fear.
It's almost absurd when you apply that invited trouble logic to everyday life, isn't it? Like you forget your umbrella, get caught in the rain, and someone says, well, you invited trouble by not checking the forecast.
Or you eat too many samosas at a party and feel unwell. You invited trouble with your lack of restraint. It sounds silly, but it highlights the flaw.
Or think about a wedding reception. People are drinking, maybe someone gets drunk and behaves inappropriately, maybe assaults someone. Do we say the victim invited trouble by being at a wedding where alcohol was served?
Absolutely not. We hold the person who acted inappropriately accountable for their actions, regardless of the setting or whether others were drinking. Responsibility lies with the actor, not the environment or the victim.
So where does this leave us now? The Supreme Court took up the case.
Yes, and they decided to defer it for 4 weeks. Essentially, giving time for reflection, perhaps for the Allahabad High Court itself to consider its stance.
So the big questions are, will the High Court adjust its approach? Will judges, not just there but everywhere, be more mindful of the impact of their language?
We have to hope so. That period of reflection is crucial.
And, despite the disturbing nature of these cases, there is a glimmer of hope here, isn't there? The fact that the Supreme Court stepped in so decisively.
Absolutely. It sends a powerful message to survivors that actually, yes, someone is listening at the highest level. The victim blaming is not acceptable within the justice system.
It validates their experiences in a way that maybe hadn't happened before in these specific instances.
And maybe that encourages us all, outside the courtroom, to be more vigilant, to challenge victim blaming narratives when we hear them in our own lives, in our communities, online.
That's a really important call to action. It's not just about judges, it's about the culture we all participate in creating.
Definitely.
And perhaps the final thought to leave with everyone is just how powerful language is, especially judicial language. The words used in court don't just decide cases. They shape how we all think about justice, consent, and who bears responsibility.
That's true. The ripple effect is enormous, something definitely worth mulling over.